Welcome. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday. Welcome to the Wednesday night edition of the Johnny Cleveland podcast. I have my special co-host. Hello, Grant. You like to say hello? You can scoot up to the mic and say hello. 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 Grant had his first day back today at school. He has been going to school virtually, and we've talked about it in the podcast other times, but today he actually got to go to school, got to go on the school bus. They are going half days, and he thoroughly enjoyed it. Got a great report from his teachers. Thank you so much, teachers. You guys are amazing. You do amazing things with Grant and all of your students. So thank you, thank you, thank you, Grant. Did you have a good day? Yeah. Hey, did we go bowling recently? Hey, Grant. What? You want to look here in the camera? Did we go bowling before? Yes. Yeah. How did you do this last week? Right. You got lots of strikes. How many strikes do you get? You want to talk to the people? You want to look at the camera? Yeah. How many strikes did you get? One. You got more than one. Grant is a very good bowler these days. He had a 125 earlier this week. He was in a stretch. Are you going to take off? I guess my co-host is leaving again. You're going to go? Okay. Yeah, we are. He's hungry. We're doing this podcast prior to the very anticipated vice presidential debate. And so this is your pre-vice presidential debate preview. No, it's not. We are not going to dive into politics, though politics and sports do collide. There is a lot we could talk about as far as the sport angle on it, but we'll avoid that. But make sure you get all of your popcorn, your entertainment, your little snacks ready. The vice presidential debate, I believe, starts at 9 o'clock Eastern. So grab your snacks, grab your popcorn, and prepare for a highly entertaining, well, probably not nearly as entertaining as last week's interesting presidential debate. A lot has happened in the last week with the debates last week with the president, and so we're here today. It is Wednesday, and we'll see where we go. We're going to focus today on the Browns and the Colts game coming up this weekend. Obviously, there's been a lot of news in the NFL, especially today with COVID. There have been several different cases throughout the league of various teams. New England Patriots, the Las Vegas Raiders team have a player that tested positive. So there are a few teams that are testing positive. I think the Raiders are going to be playing the Kansas City Chiefs again. Obviously, the Chiefs and the Patriots just played this weekend. They postponed their game until Monday. It was nice to have the Monday night game on, and prior to the other Monday night game, which I think was, now I can't remember. It was Green Bay, and who was the other team? Green Bay played someone who wasn't very good, and Green Bay won. Aaron Rodgers, like I said before, has a lot to prove. He certainly doesn't want to go out. He wants to go out a winner, and it would not surprise me one bit if Aaron Rodgers gets to the Super Bowl. I'm telling you, Browns, Green Bay, Cleveland, and Green Bay. I think that would be a fantastic way to end this crazy 2020 season. The Browns are playing very well, and we're going to go through some of those stats shortly and kind of compare notes between them and the Indianapolis Colts, who used to be the Baltimore Colts. And we'll do a little run back on a little history lessons of the Browns versus the Colts games over the last several years. So looking forward to talking about that. Actually, I was at one of those games back in the day when I was younger. And so just before we dive into the Cleveland-Indianapolis game, there are a few other side notes, in the world of sports. One of them involves the NBA. LeBron James has been playing against the Miami Heat. Well, and he and his teammates from the Los Angeles Lakers have been playing the Heat, but you really just need LeBron. It's basically 1-5. Probably LeBron would win that. No, just kidding. But, LeBron, it really does. I know we have this continuous debate about LeBron and Michael Jordan, especially this last week. The Lakers won last night's game, so they've taken a commanding 3-1 lead over the Miami Heat. Lakers are going to win the series, but in Game 3, the Lakers lost to Miami. And some folks that don't like LeBron, mostly those on the conservative side of politics who like to pick on LeBron, started talking about how he's a sore loser. He was walking off the court. He was walking off the court, but the clock was running out, and the clock was stopped with like 0.7 seconds. It wasn't like the Pistons Chicago Bulls game from the 1980s where the entire Pistons team just decided to take off, 10 minutes before the game was over. Not really, but the idea that LeBron is a sore loser is just absolutely ridiculous. I don't like the fact that LeBron doesn't play for the Cavaliers anymore, but LeBron has done a whole heck of a lot for basketball, a whole heck of a lot in this country. And one thing that came up today, he was honored, and his school was also honored that he's created in Akron, Ohio. The I Promise school that he's created, that's opened up in 2018, his school and he himself are going to be denoted on the new Wheaties box, the Breakfast of Champions. Wheaties has been doing this for 84 years. They have it like an athlete of the year, and LeBron is this year's recipient. It's crazy to think that he hasn't been on the Wheaties box until now, but they're going to use his photos and whatnot on the Wheaties box throughout the year, and also recognize his school, where kids who go to his school in high school then are guaranteed a college education, which is just phenomenal. So all of those folks that are out there who continually are picking and bashing, and I know, LeBron can be, I don't know LeBron personally. I just know that he has done a lot for this area, for this community up in the northeastern part of Ohio, and for those students, and he should be applauded for doing that. I think it's great that he's going to be on the box this year for Wheaties. By the way, the trivia question today, if you're interested and you're watching and listening, I would love an email response, or you can answer this question on Facebook or Twitter. By the way, you can reach us. I'm going to put these on here at the bottom, at the J Cleveland Pod on Facebook and on Twitter. The question is, who was the first athlete that was put on the Wheaties box as the athlete of the year? There you go. What is the answer to that? That's a very interesting one. I'd love to see if you could find the answer to that. So who was the athlete back in 1934 that was on the cover of the Wheaties box? All right, there you go. So congratulations to LeBron. I think the other part of this, LeBron has now been in 10 finals. All right. He has 3 championships. He's played for 3 different teams and been in 10 championship finals. Now, I know Michael has 6 championships, which will never be, no one will ever reach that. And I'm not comparing LeBron to Michael, but I think LeBron needs to be put up. Oh, here comes my co-host again. Oh, he's out here on the side. This is a very entertaining part of the end of the day. People are coming back. We live in this condo area. Oh, here he is. Hello, how are you? He had a very good day, I believe, and so still wearing his Cincinnati Reds hat. He's a devout Cincinnati Reds fan. But wearing his Ohio State Buckeye, the Ohio State University t-shirt. Yes. But I was jump back to LeBron here in a second, but he did. I had mentioned that Grant is an avid bowler. I think in the last 12 games, he's bowled over 100 in 9 of those 12 games. So congratulations to you, Grant. The question with the Wheaties box was, who was the first person on the Wheaties box? 1934. Okay, let's dive into Cleveland Browns and the Indianapolis Colts. There's a lot of history with the Colts and the Browns. It goes back to the last time that the Cleveland Browns won a championship. Yes, not a Super Bowl, but a championship prior to the Super Bowl starting. 1964, they beat the Baltimore then Colts. Of course, now then we had awful, our owner, Modell, sold his heart, sold his soul, and we took that team. He took the Cleveland Browns team of 1995 and then put them in Baltimore, which is just absurd when you think about the fact that the last championship we had was against the Baltimore and Colts. Now they're the Indianapolis Colts, and the Browns have a lot of history with the Indianapolis Colts. Recent history: the Browns played the Colts back in 2017. That was when the great DeShone Kizer, the graduate from Notre Dame University, played against the Colts. In that game, the Browns lost. They were down in that game pretty handily in the first half. It was back in 2017. I think it was back in September. Looking at my notes here, yeah, they had there were where is it? Let me see here. It was 2017. They lost 31-28. They were down like 28-14 at halftime. The Browns kind of made a subtle comeback. But that game was played in Indianapolis. By the way, I have a story of Indianapolis that I'm going to share at the end of this podcast that's quite entertaining. So stay tuned for that. As my sister Karen listens to this podcast, she will enjoy this story. Remember Aunt Karen, Grant, man? He's over here. He heard Aunt Karen's name. He got very excited. Okay, so back in 2014, the Browns, that was the year that the Browns were pretty decent team. If you remember, that was a very interesting game too. The Browns lost that game 25-24 to the Indianapolis Colts. And at that point, that was when Brian Hoyer, yes, the quarterback who played this last weekend for England and was pretty bad against the Kansas City Chiefs. Back in 2014 was playing for the Browns, and he was doing a pretty decent job. And up until that point, the Browns had gotten their record up to 7-4. Now, I will tell you, and many of those folks who listen to this podcast know that I was a very big Johnny Manziel fan back in 2014. And you can probably find, I understand that some of my cousins have proof of the comments that I did make in social media back in 2014, how Brian Hoyer was awful, blah, blah, blah. So when they brought in Johnny Manziel, I was excited. Now, that happened right after the Browns lost to the Indianapolis Colts back in that game in 2014. The Browns actually had a lead in that game, 21-7. So, with that basis and just look back at it, I mean, the Browns had a lead thanks to Brian Hoyer and the offense. But lost that game very late. They scored a touchdown that Andrew Luck was quarterbacking for the Colts back then, and they scored with like just over 30 seconds to go in that game, won it 25-24. And the following week was when Johnny Manziel took the starting role, and they played that game against if you remember that game, they played the Cincinnati Bengals, and it was embarrassing. The Browns, I believe, lost that game 30-0, if I recall right. They did not score. Johnny Manziel was awful. Johnny Manziel was an awful quarterback in the NFL. I recognize that now. So does the rest of Cleveland. We don't want to talk about him, but that's kind of when all things happen. So Indianapolis Colts have some history that kind of affected Cleveland sports, even going back to the late 80s. If you remember, if you were following a fan of the Browns back in the late 80s, in 86, the Browns made it all the way to the championship game. And in 86 season, they lost to they played the Jets. They won that game in double overtime, which I was at. It was fantastic. Then they lost to the then Denver Broncos, where John Elway drove the length of the field and killed my childhood. But then the following year, in 87, the Browns went back to the championship game where they again lost to Denver. But prior to that game, Grant is back. So prior to that game, in the beginning of 1988, January, they played the Indianapolis Colts. In that game, the Browns ran away with it late. That was when the Indianapolis Colts had Eric Dickerson. And the game was actually relatively tight. I think at one point the game was even close to tied, or it was like 21 all. The Browns ended up scoring 17 points. Favorite receivers like Brian Brennan caught a touchdown pass, and the Browns ended that game with a impressive Frank Minifield interception that was run back for 48 yards that really sealed the deal. Yes, sealed the deal, right, Grant man? Yes. Frank Minifield ran it back, and the Browns ended up winning that game in the 1988 divisional. Well, it was the 87 season, but it was beginning of '88. The following week, the Browns went out to Denver and got clobbered. So there you go. So a little history with the Indianapolis Colts. So now the Colts are quarterbacked by Philip Rivers. The San Diego Chargers quarterback of the past is now an Indianapolis Colt. And if you look at lots of things currently, by the way, I'm out here in the beautiful on our deck of our condo tonight. Again, the sun is setting. The trees here in Ohio are fantastic. It's one of those things that when I moved from Kansas back to Ohio, I was looking forward to greatly, were the falls. And this is a great night. I wish you guys could all see the beautiful view that we've got out here on the deck, and the trees are just magnificently colored. We've got a tree in our front yard that's like a bright red right now, which is just awesome. So anyway, back to my Indianapolis Colts and Browns. So currently the Browns and the Colts are going into this game. They're both going to be 3-1. And it's a tale of really two different types of teams. The Colts are really all about defense. And if you look at the stats and you look at kind of the breakdown of what both teams are really good at, the Colts are excellent defenders. The Browns are not. The Browns have a very good offense. I was looking at some of the different power rankings first off today, and Phil, top of the chart here with the quarterback. You got Philip Rivers. He is, his quarterback. He's kind of ranked kind of in the middle part of the rankings now as far as quarterbacks. He's, I think, ranked 17th in the latest ratings that I saw. Baker Mayfield is rated 11th. Overall, there are in there for their offenses right now. I'll just give you another example. Cleveland has scored 124 points so far offensively. Their defense, though, has given up 126. Compare that to the Colts this year. They've scored 103 points. They've only given up 56 points. They're led by their running back, Jonathan Taylor, the rookie. And then they still have Ty Hilton, who's even playing back in 2014 for the Colts. And then the Mo Alley Cox, their new player receiver. So those are their primary players on the offensive end of things. They're in the power rankings overall right now. The Colts and the Browns are very, very close. The Bleacher Report came out. Cleveland's rated 12. Indianapolis is rated 14. In the USA Today rankings, the Colts are ranked 10th. The Browns are ranked 11th. So very close. So, when you get down to it, it's interesting because the Browns, on paper, when you start looking at stats for, various things, especially on the defensive end of things, just one thing that just popped out at me completely, why Indianapolis is a better defense as far as statistically, the Browns have given up over 1,200 yards on defense. That's third to last. That's pretty awful. But I will tell you this. Guess who's last in giving up yards, which is interesting. And they've been depleted also with their secondary, and that's the Seattle Seahawks. They've given up over 1,600 yards. So, and they're a very good team, but they've given up just an extraordinary number of yards. The Browns, too, have given up a lot of yards. Now, the Colts, on the other hand, have only given up 637 yards. Now, these are yards on passing. I should make sure that you guys understand that that's not all of the yardage, but passing yards, the Browns have given up 1,200 yards, and the Colts have only given up 600, so like half. Longest plays from scrimmage, Colts have only given up at the longest play that they've given up on defense has been 33 yards. The Browns defense has given up a play where the other team had a 58-yard gain. Now, as far as turnovers, the Browns actually have more turnovers than the Colts. And the real significant thing to me, and I've said this in other podcasts, is that the Browns are making those turnovers and turning them into points. Kevin Stefanski was talking today in his press conference, and he talked a lot about that point. And we've heard that as a Browns fan, how many years? Like, go back 2 years ago when the Browns played the Steelers. In that game, the Browns and the Steelers tied. It was a drizzling rain in the beginning of September, and we were all excited and pumped up that the Browns were going to really, really kick off a great season. They tied the Steelers. The Browns had 6 turnovers in that game and did diddly squat. Didn't win the game, should have. The Browns now are getting 3 or 4 turnovers a game, and all those turnovers are, in many senses, turning into touchdowns. Touchdowns. Grant came back, my colleague. So, lots of things to look there. Now, here's the thing on offense. The Browns have over 800 yards rushing. They lead the league in rushing right now with over 800 yards, whereas the Colts only have 300 yards in total rushing offense. The Browns have 8 touchdowns offensively. Here's another significant thing on the offensive end, the thing for the Browns. They have, 20 plus on 20 plus yard possessions. They're first in the league. Yes. What do you think about that? So that's very significant. I see, like, offensively, that the Browns, when they're running backs, they've had a significant number. I think, I'm not sure exactly how many total, but they lead the league in total numbers over 20 yards. So that's a significant thing there. On touchdowns, they've only given up. Well, on the Browns have given up a lot of touchdowns defensively. They've given up 16, whereas the Colts have not. They're not anywhere even close to that. So this game is going to come down to the Colts defense and the Browns offense. The Browns put up 49 points, and really just outran, did everything offensively, and can they do that against the Colts? The Colts are kind of a walk in the park sort of. They're not doing a lot of stuff on offense, but they've got a smart quarterback back there. Now, the other part of this that I see that's significant is that Myles Garrett has 5 sacks. He has, of those 5 sacks, 3 of them are strip sacks, where he stripped the ball, had the opponent fumble, and on 2 of those occasions, I think he's recovered it himself, which is just amazing. So he's going to have it. The offensive line for the Colts, what I've read this last week, is not very, very strong. I don't know what's going on behind me. I hear a bunch of things out here. So if you hear a blowing, I'm not sure what that is. So sorry if it's interfering with the broadcast, but hopefully it's not being picked up too much. Okay, so I see Myles Garrett again as being a pretty significant play in this. If he can get a sack or 2, create some havoc back there, it's really going to put pressure on Phillip Rivers to complete, throws. I don't think they're going to be able to. I think the Browns' offense is so talented. I see them continuing to score points, and the Colts are going to have to play with that. Now, obviously, if the Colts can get a lead and they have that strong defense, we'll see. But right now, no one is stopping the Browns' runners. They've got over 800 yards, which is just very significant. And Nick Chubb went down, and he's going to be out anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks. I predict that Nick Chubb will be coming back again after the bye, which is we'll have these next 4 games. The Browns have a bye, and I believe it's on November 15th. The Browns have a home games against Houston and Philadelphia. And I think Chubb will be ready to go. Hopefully everything goes well, but that's my prediction there. But in the meantime, you got Kareem Hunt. You got D'Ernest Johnson. And these guys, it's been interesting to listen to people in the local media talk about that. And, with Chubb being down, and especially in the national media, they're like, oh, well, now the Browns are in trouble. Well, no, they had over 300 yards rushing. Now, I know teams will adapt to that and on the defensive end. But the Browns schemes, and listening to Kevin Stefanski, they are doing some amazing things with their schemes. And they're talking today in the press conference again with Kevin Stefanski about how their coaches are they're planning plays 2 or 3 quarters ahead of time. That's a big difference. Think about that a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, all those years with Hugh Jackson, and last year with Freddie Kitchens. I mean, our offense was always just coming up with offense on the fly, it seemed like. These coaches today that we have for the Browns are really managing things really well. Now, I know if everything seems better as they're winning, and they're winning right now, but the Browns haven't won in a long time. If they win this game on Sunday, it'll be the first time since 1994 that they've started the season off at 4-1. Now, if you remember that year, that was the last year the Browns were really, really, really good. Before then, they were taken to Baltimore. So we'll see what happens. The Colts. I was looking at the Colts and the Browns opponents, and the Colts opponents overall have only won. What is it? Let's see here. 5 games total. The Browns opponents have so far won 6 games total. So I get tired. I get really annoyed with this whole narrative all the time. Well, the Browns haven't beat anybody good. And then last week it was, well, they just beat the Cowboys, and the Cowboys are 1-3. Well, okay, but disregard that. I mean, when the Browns played the Ravens, everybody was 0-0. Well, I say, well, they weren't a good team. Well, yeah, we all know the Ravens are a good team. They got blown out of the water by them in that first week. I guarantee that second game in Cleveland will be significantly different. But I get tired of the narrative about, well, the Browns don't beat anybody over 500. Well, this will be a test. I understand. And, playing the Colts, it'll be a challenge because they have a very good defense. We'll see. The Browns have 12,000 fans in the stands. They've made that limit higher now. So that's great for Browns fans. I look forward to seeing more fans as we watch the games. And, we'll just see. I think we'll have some predictions again on this weekend when we come to you later, probably on Saturday morning quarterback. We tried doing that last week, so we're going to try it again this week. But I see the game's going to be pretty close again. It's going to come down to those little things. Myles Garrett, what kind of game does he have? What do our running backs do? I think that the schemes that we're running, and I think our offensive linemen are doing a fantastic job of blocking downfield. Our tight ends, all the receivers are stepping up and doing some great things. So looking forward to a really exciting game. It'll be a late start, about a 4:25 start. So I'm sure a lot of folks will be watching that closely. If the Browns lose the game and they get blown out, I'll be surprised. If the Browns lose the game and it's close, it's growing pains. If the Browns win the game, we're 4-1. The Browns are 4-1, not me. I'd like to always say that I'm part of the team. But I'm kind of part of the team, aren't right? Us Browns fans. That's something that I think other fan bases do not understand when we try to talk to them about being a Cleveland Browns fan. So if you're listening to this podcast, and many of you know this take that I share a lot, but being a Browns fan is more than just, it is our team, but we talk about that team as being part of us. And that doesn't happen anywhere around the country. I promise you. When you go watch other teams and their loyalty. Yeah, they're loyal. They like their team, but there's something special about being a Cleveland fan. And that's why we do these podcasts, and that's why we share these thoughts. So, all right, I'll have that prediction again on Friday with what I think is going to happen. I think the Browns are going to win that game. I'll give you a score as we get closer to the weekend. So I want to finish with a little fun story with Indianapolis, because Indianapolis is one of those towns that I took a trip through many, many, many times on my route from Wichita, Kansas to here in Columbus, or up to Worcester. I say it both ways. I do that in honor of my late grandfather, Suchan, who would sometimes jokingly say Worcester. And a lot of folks who aren't familiar with Worcester see the spelling. It's spelled like rooster, and so they'll say Worcester. So that's in honor of my grandpa. All right, so story goes in Indianapolis, we would take all these trips. So when I was first starting my out of college, I got my first job in Kansas, in the Wichita area. And in doing so, I moved in late July, early August of that one. I think it was back in 1992. And I had to get all my stuff moved all the way there to Wichita. So I was planning on originally going by myself. Well, my sister, Karen, at the last minute said, hey, I'll go with you because, I don't want you driving on your own all the way out there to Wichita. which is from here to Kansas is anywhere between 13 and 16 hours, depending on where you go in the state. So I was like, okay, this is great. So very excited. First job I would ever have out of college, anticipating all of that. As we were getting ready to leave Ohio that first morning, my sister and I bought some coffees. And I don't know if it was a good omen or not, but the coffees spilled everywhere in the front part of the U-Haul. And it was late, like I said, late July, early August. So, every insect, every bug, every fly that you could imagine found that spilled coffee. But we continued, we managed to continue our trek. Everything smelled like coffee. And we get to Indianapolis area, and we're driving one of these old, U-Hauls. And we're driving through, my sister is driving through at that point. And if you don't know anything about Indianapolis, we're going by the old, or the stadiums there, Lucas Oil Field. And we realized that the brakes on the vehicle start to not work, like they stopped. And my sister's driving, and all of a sudden we're like, oh my gosh, she couldn't, like they weren't doing anything. We saw the nearest exit. We're right in the heart of downtown Indianapolis. It's busy. There's cars everywhere. My sister, bless her heart, she was able to maneuver the vehicle somehow, and we were able to decrease our rate of speed enough to where when we got off the ramp, we continued to roll, but she was able to manage to get to the nearest gas station. I still, to this day, do not know how she was able to do it, but bless her heart. And we ended up calling U-Haul. They got us came out, got us a new vehicle, but it was very late that evening. And then I think we stayed somewhere. And then we continued our trek to Kansas the next day. Interestingly enough, when we continued our trek to Kansas the next day, we had another mishap when we went to fill the gas tank up in the U-Haul. We were about 3 hours away from Wichita. And we had left the gas cap off the vehicle. So we're driving without the gas cap, and we realized that the low fuel is coming back on because the gasoline is spewing as we're traveling. So we had to turn around the vehicle and went back to the last exit, which had a Walmart at it, and we were able to find a gas cap and then completed our journey to Wichita. So it was one of those journeys, one of those trips. Indianapolis has a special place because every time we drive through Indianapolis, there's always an exit. I'm like, oh, that was the exit where we almost, had a terrible, awful accident because we had no brakes, and my sister saved the day. So thank you, Karen, for saving the day. Well, folks, I hope you all have a great afternoon. Thank you for joining me. Hey, it's a little bit after 7, so you still got a couple hours before the vice presidential debate. Oh, I'm just eager to watch that, aren't you? And I hope you pop your popcorn, get your snacks ready for all that. And I hope you all have a great afternoon or rest of your evening. We'll talk to you again later this weekend. And until then, everybody, remember to keep smiling. Take care, everybody.